The final day of round 20 did get a bit crazy towards the end of the day. The final two games arguably the best of the round. But if you've read the title of this very video, then you know what my thoughts are on the first game. This was my match of the round. The New Zealand Warriors, they hosted the Cronulla Sharks. A big test for both sides. The Cronulla Sharks, we've been waiting for them to take it to a top 8 side, but instead it was the New Zealand Warriors proving that they are the real deal in this 2023 season, picking up a 44 points to 12 win over those very Cronulla Sharks. But I'm not going to sit here and praise the Warriors for too long, because at this point it is pretty much expected. They're not the surprise packet anymore. At the end of the year they will be, but there is no doubt that they are one of the contenders in this year's premiership race. They currently sit in 4th on the live ladder as of recording. They'll drop down to 5th when the Canberra Raiders get their points for the bye. But the Warriors, I know they've still got Tamare Martin to come back, but the way Luke Metcalf is playing and the way he is combining with Sean Johnson is making this Warriors side such a dangerous outfit. And as good as their backs are, in particular Dallin Watene-Zelezniak and Charles Ziegler-Klokstad, obviously Sean Johnson is having one of the best seasons he's ever had in his 10-plus year career. It's those forwards. Wade Egan as well, but Adam Fanua-Blake, 65 minutes. He also scored a try, 183 running meters. We talk about Payne Haas's ridiculous stat line all the time. It's funny, isn't it? If AFB was in Origin contention, we'd be talking about him on the same level as Payne Haas, but because he isn't, we sort of forget about including him in that best prop conversation. Obviously, we've got James Fisher-Harris there as well. You'd probably consider those three the top three: Payne Haas, AFB, and James Fisher-Harris. But if you want to talk about the form this year alone, if you said Adam Fanua-Blake, I'd probably be hard to argue against it. He has been absolutely phenomenal this year, but as good as the Warriors are, and as good as the Warriors were on Sunday, we have to talk about the Cronulla Sharks. They still have yet to beat a top 8 team, and I honestly think that the top 4 is gone. And I personally am of the belief that you have to make the top 4 to be able to win the premiership in the NRL, certainly in the modern era. And I think when you consider the fact that they've already one of the sides to have all 3 of their buys and their run home, considering the fact that they just cannot beat a top 8 side, then I think that you can rule the Cronulla Sharks out of premiership contention. Look, I'm not going to put the line through them just yet and say that there's no chance, but I will state right now that I'll be very surprised if they can turn this around. I don't think it's a playing roster thing, but it does give me similar vibes to Manly in 2021. Now, I don't think Manly's was as bad as this, because their main problems with those top 3 sides back when the Melbourne Storm, South Sydney Rabbitohs and Penrith Panthers were ruling this competition. The Sharks give off similar vibes. I mean, the top 8 at the moment is the Panthers, the Broncos, the Storm, the Warriors, Raiders, Cowboys and Eels. And I can't remember the time the Cronulla Sharks have beaten any of those sides. They obviously beat the Cowboys this year. So if you wanted to go off the top 8 at the moment, then I guess you could say that they have been a top 8 side, quote unquote. But they haven't beaten a side that's in the top 8 so far this year. What I mean by that is a team that they're playing that round where they're in the 8, they can't even beat them. You combine that with their straight sets finals exit last year after they finished second. And Nico Hines, he was arguably the best player in the world. I bet that part of the reason that Nico wasn't picked for Origin is because, well, I don't think he's really been the reason they've lost or played that badly. Like, even in this game, I don't think you could blame him as the reason that they lost. But it's not helping the fact that Nico Hines can't beat a top 8 side this year. So, look, I don't think you can say the Cronulla Sharks are going to be anywhere near the top 4 this year. I still think they will be there for finals football, because I do think that with Manly and the Roosters losing on the weekend, that all but rules them out. we saw that you needed 13 wins. The Broncos got 13 wins last year and they couldn't play finals. Looking at how close this competition is, I think 13 wins once again might not be enough to get you inside the top 8. So if the Cronulla Sharks don't turn things around very quickly, then I think that they're going to be hard to sneak into anything higher than 6th place. When you look at their run home, they've got Manly next week in Cronulla. You think they'll win that, but then they've got to play Penrith away, the Rabbitohs in Perth, then they've got the Titans away, then they've got to go to Townsville to play the Cowboys, then they've got the Knights, and they've got the Raiders. If you're going off what we think so far this year, then you could put the Raiders game, the Penrith game, and the Rabbitohs game down as 3 losses. And I think the Cowboys have turned the corner, and I think they'll be the favourites going into that game. That gives them at least 10 losses. So it's going to be hard for the Cronulla Sharks to be able to claim a home final. Looking at the teams on the ladder, I don't think they'll finish higher than the Rabbitohs, the Warriors, the Storm, the Broncos, the Panthers, even the Eels and the Cowboys. It wouldn't surprise me if the Sharks finished 8th. I'll be very shocked if they can sneak into the 4. Don't be surprised, I think, if we see some changes made to the side. I think Connor Tracy's been screaming to get a start. Whether they want to go the route of putting him at number 6, because as good as Matty Moylan can be in attack, Nico Hines, William Kennedy, Blake Brayley, they're obviously the main stars of the show. They're really missing Dale Finucane. Hopefully, I know he's been very unlucky, at least my opinion, with some of these suspensions this year. But if he can get over that hump, then I definitely feel like they can turn the corner. He's got to be on the field for them to get any win out of those 4 games I mentioned earlier. But as for the title of the video, I mean, let me know in the comments below if you disagree. But in my opinion, the Cronulla Sharks, they're pretenders in 2023. Disappointing. I thought after their straight set finals exit last year that they would have come out firing and wanted to prove that they can hang with the top sides, and they did during last year's regular season. I think they knocked off some of the big top tier teams, but they just haven't this year. So maybe next year's the year, although I think they're going to be losing a few players. They're going to bring, I'm not sure who they're bringing in, but I feel like guys who aren't getting regular first grade, they might walk, and that's what's going to happen. When you've got a side like the Sharks who look as good as they do on paper, they're obviously going to lose players and struggle to retain anyone. But it'll be interesting, that's for sure. Can Nico Hines lead the Sharks? Can Craig Fitzgibbon fix these Sharks? He has to do it sooner rather than later. But in my opinion, I just can't see the Cronulla Sharks, especially. I thought that was their best chance to beat a top 8 side. They suffered that embarrassing comeback loss to the Warriors earlier on this year. I know the game was in New Zealand, but I tipped the Sharks. I thought they'd be fired up. Unfortunately not. They've had a few easy games and they were sort of starting to get back on the Sharkies bandwagon after a few big wins since that Melbourne Storm game. But once again, the Sharks just look very vulnerable. And as good as the Warriors are, they're still not a Penrith and they're still not a Rabbitohs. So I think those 2 games will be the big test for Cronulla. But as for the moment, I just can't see the Cronulla Sharks lifting that trophy on the first weekend of October. In the second game, the Dolphins, they put up a pretty strong fight going up against the Penrith Panthers. Look, I know it's easy to say that, and a lot of Penrith fans are going to be like, well, we had our second string side, and I totally get that. But at this point, what Ivan Cleary is doing is just insane. There's no other way to put it. What he is doing with this Penrith Panthers is crazy. Isaac Targo looks as good as Stephen Crine has looked all season on that right-hand centre spot. Jack Cogger has come in, and I love Sean O'Sullivan, and I think he's been playing great for the Dolphins up until this game. But it looks like they've replaced him. They haven't replaced him. It looks like they just haven't replaced him. That's how good Jack Cogger has been. I don't think they've lost the game, and it's crazy to think people wrote them off after just the first few rounds. They lost Appy and they lost Kickout. They figured out who's going to be that left second rower. Ivan's caved in. He's put Scott Sorensen there, and it's brought the best out of Jerome Luai, who plays 100th game today. A lot of people don't like him, but it's hard to argue with the start to career Luai has had. I can't remember many players who've had a good as an impact over their first 100 games as Jerome Luai. But another flawless performance from Penrith. They still remain on top of the ladder, and it's going to be hard to see them finishing anything lower than a top 2 spot. And then the final game was absolutely crazy. The Parramatta Eels out there at CommBank hang on to a 25-24 point win. I know a lot of Titans fans will be upset, and in my opinion, I have to agree. If the Clinton Gutherson try goes up as a try from the referee, I can sort of understand, but I can't believe they overruled it. I thought for sure at least a bit of Gutho's knee was touching the line. Even some of his bloody knee hair. Surely one of them was touching that line. But at the end of the day, the Titans, they had 13 on 11 for a good 7 minutes. The Eels suffered back-to-back sin bins. And this is the NRL. I don't care if you're the Tigers playing Penrith. They did beat them already, so that's a bad comparison. But you've got to be able to capitalise in that sort of situation. And they did. But outside of that, they definitely struggle. The Titans are another team that I think have really let the top 8 slip losing this game. I still think that you could probably argue that anyone Titans above can definitely still make a case to make the finals. Probably Roosters above, to be honest. But it's going to be hard. A lot of those teams in that little 9 to 14 range have had all their 3 byes, except the Bunnies have only had 1. So it's going to be difficult. Like I said, I think even 13 wins isn't going to be enough to make finals. And Manly, Titans, Dolphins, and Roosters will kind of have to go undefeated from here on out. In saying that, though, it's going to be impossible for any of them to win the comp. The Roosters are an interesting side, and I'm going to make a video on that soon, so look out for that one, and you can look out for it by subscribing to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. An awesome round 20. We're in the 20s. Origin's done. We're on the race to finals. As always, smash that like button. Leave a comment down below. What was your biggest takeaway from the Sunday round 20 of the 2023 NRL season? Type it out in that comment section below. Subscribe to the channel. Do the big 3. And I'll see you in the next one.